My college advisor pointed at my ripped jeans. After I came to her about assault, then said, "Why the F were you alone with him, especially wearing that?" When I asked why she was letting him get away, she rolled her eyes and said, "You're confusing life with a fairy tale. Boys will be boys." I didn't say a word. That was 4 semesters ago. Yesterday, she was escorted off campus, her office door locked from the outside. My entire university was a safe haven for ARPists. On the first day, they gave us an hour-long presentation on boundaries. The lecturer was an old man who still used a Nokia block phone. He had long white hair, beady eyes, very expensive suit. 90% of campus attacks involved alcohol. Now what does this tell us? The room went silent. Girls that drift hanging open, but quickly closed it shut when I noticed one of the guys across the room staring at me and grabbing the bulge through his shorts. That's when I got the notification. It was my roommate Rachel texting me even though we were right beside each other. She told me that her sister went to the university and was told by her sorority sisters to never report anything. I pinched the bridge of my nose because Rachel was bright and bubbly, the type to exaggerate things for comedic effect. So I just replied saying, "No way," before turning my phone off. But a week later, I realized I was part of the problem because when I met my tour guide a week later and joked about what Rachel said, her face fell. I furrowed my eyebrows, not knowing what was wrong with what I said, and that's when told me, "I had reported one last year," she said, her voice so quiet it could have been mistaken for an exhale. "I lost my scholarship and had to borrow money from my dirt poor family just to afford rent." "What happened to the guy?" I asked. A part of me didn't even want to know the answer. Since I was deemed a liar, the university rewarded him for dealing with my BS. He was given my scholarship. My heart twisted. And one thing about me is that I am a girl's girl. If we have a crush on the same boy, I will let you have him. So now, seeing Sarah sit in front of me feeling completely helpless, I knew I had to do something. I didn't go to the police, didn't post anything about it. I didn't tell a soul, because I was ready to play the long game. I spent the next 2 semesters being the perfect student. I practically lived like a Mormon. Never drank, spent my weekends doing Chloe Ting workouts and attending study groups, deleted most traces of my social media. But in the end, none of it mattered, because one day, I was the second one to show up to my science study group, and Jake was the first. I sat down beside him to be polite and stared at the ground to show him I didn't want to talk. But of course, he spoke anyway. "I'd like to see those pretty eyes do something other than study all day." I swear I thought he was pranking me, but that's when I got the "Jake is typing" notification on Snapchat. He had literally texted me saying, "I'll show you mine if you show me yours." And when I looked up at him, he had this huge smirk on his face. Dude actually believed he was Sir Isaac Riston LOL. I thought the radio silence between us was enough for him to take the hint, but I was wrong. Because, well, let's just say I was soon faced with the contents of his "My eyes only." I immediately burst into tears and started hyperventilating. You see, the last time I had come into contact with anything asexual was when a man stole my innocence during childhood. I wasn't going to mention this part, but now I think it's relevant to the story. Anyway, there I was, crying my eyes out, when Jake put his hand on my back to comfort me, which soon turned into him trying to undo the clasp of my bra. I ran into the bathroom stall, practically rocking back and forth on the toilet seat. When I finally stopped, I decided I had had enough and stormed towards my advisor to ask about reporting. I expected her to comfort me, or at least tell me the procedures, but no. Why the F were you alone with him, especially wearing that?" She then pointed to my ripped jeans like they were to blame. I just smiled and walked away because I had an ace up my sleeve, one that I didn't want to pull out unless I absolutely had to. My daddy was a rich lawyer. He was the one who had put my childhood ARPist away, and I knew he would do anything for me. And I had just recorded our entire conversation. I called my dad that night. He listened to the recording 3 times without saying a word. Then he told me to document everything and keep my head down for now. He said he'd file the complaint himself but needed more evidence first. I trusted him completely. The next morning, Jake was already spreading rumors about me. Apparently, I was unstable and making things up for attention. His fraternity brothers started showing up everywhere I went. They'd sit behind me in the library taking photos. They'd follow me to the dining hall and film me eating. One of them even stood outside my dorm room for 20 minutes just staring at the door. I kept my phone recording constantly. Sarah texted me that night asking if I was okay. She said she recognized what was happening because they did the same thing to her. I told her I was fine, but she could hear the fear in my voice through text somehow. Rachel started acting weird around me. She'd leave the room whenever I entered. She stopped inviting me to lunch. I figured Jake's crew had gotten to her too. Then one night she broke down crying. She told me they'd sent her anonymous messages about her scholarship. They said if she kept being my friend, they'd make sure she lost it. That's when she finally told me the truth about her sister. Her sister was Jake's first victim 2 years ago. She had to drop out after losing her scholarship. Rachel had been carrying that secret since freshman year. I hugged her and told her it wasn't her fault. We both cried for like an hour. The university started their investigation, but it moved at a snail's pace. They scheduled my first interview for 3 weeks out. Meanwhile, my grades started dropping mysteriously. Assignments I'd submitted on time were marked late. Tests I'd aced came back with failing grades. My attendance records showed absences on days I was definitely in class. Someone with admin access was messing with my records. I screenshot everything and sent it to my dad. He hired a private investigator immediately. The PI started digging into Jake's background and connections at the school. Turns out Jake's uncle worked in the administration office. The same uncle who handled Sarah's case, the same uncle who handled Rachel's sister's case. The pattern was obvious. They called me in for a mandatory meeting with 3 administrators. They said Jake had filed a countercomplaint against me for harassment. They showed me edited screenshots of messages that made me look crazy. Messages I'd never sent. Someone had photoshopped whole conversations. I stayed calm and asked for copies of everything. They refused, said it was confidential. I recorded that too. My dad's PI discovered the administrator helping Jake was definitely his uncle. The guy had been there for 15 years. He had access to everything. Student records, complaint files, security footage. He could make anything disappear. And apparently he had been doing exactly that for years. I came back to my dorm one day to find it completely ransacked. Nothing was stolen, but everything was touched. My underwear drawer was dumped on the bed. My laptop was moved. My photos were scattered on the floor. It was a message. They wanted me to know they could get to me whenever they wanted. I installed a hidden camera after that. Sarah reached out again and asked to meet in person. We met at a coffee shop off campus. She looked around nervously the whole time. Then she told me she'd kept copies of everything from her case. The security footage that supposedly got corrupted. The original complaint that supposedly got lost. Even emails from Jake's uncle telling her to drop the case or face consequences. She'd been too scared to do anything with it. Rachel's sister agreed to meet me too. She still had her original paperwork. the documents the university claimed never existed. She showed me emails from administrators gaslighting her, telling her she was confused about what happened, telling her she was ruining a good young man's future. We started a group chat with encrypted messaging. Just me, Sarah, Rachel, and her sister at first. Then Sarah knew another girl. That girl knew 2 more. Within a week, we had 7 victims all sharing their stories, all with similar experiences, all involving Jake or his friends, all handled by his uncle. Rachel decided to go undercover. She started hanging out with Jake's friend group, pretending she'd ditched me for them. They bought it immediately. Guys like that always think girls will choose them over their friends. She learned about their group chats, their shared drives, the way they talked about us like we were conquests, like trophies. One night, she texted me frantically. She'd gotten into one of their laptops at a party, found a folder labeled wins. It was full of photos and videos of girls from our school, some clearly taken without consent, some showing girls who were obviously too hammered to know what was happening. I felt sick, but we finally had real evidence. My dad's PI had been building a timeline, tracking down former students who'd transferred suddenly, following paper trails of complaints that went nowhere. He found 12 victims over 5 years, 12 girls who'd been failed by the same system, by the same administrator, by the same group of guys who thought they were untouchable. Jake started getting bolder. He'd show up wherever I was, stand just close enough to make me uncomfortable, close enough that I could smell his cologne, the same cologne from that day in the study room. He'd smirk at me, whisper things when no one else could hear, tell me I should just give up, tell me no one would believe me, tell me I was wasting my time. His uncle called me in for another meeting, told me my grades were slipping, that maybe I should consider transferring, that this environment might not be healthy for me. I smiled and nodded and recorded every word. He had no idea what was coming. The other girls were getting braver too. We met in person for the first time, all 7 of us in Sarah's apartment. We compared notes, shared evidence, cried together, laughed together, felt less alone. Some of them had been carrying this weight for years. Finally, having people who believed them changed everything. Rachel kept feeding us information from the inside. Jake's group was planning something big for the upcoming party. They were joking about finding fresh meat, about teaching the uptight girls a lesson. She recorded everything on her phone. We knew we had to act soon. My dad had been working with his legal team, building an airtight case, but he said we needed one more thing. We needed Jake to admit what he'd done, to implicate himself and his uncle, to show the pattern clearly. It seemed impossible. Guys like Jake don't confess. They deny until the end. But I had an idea. I knew Jake's biggest weakness was his ego. He couldn't resist bragging about his conquests, his connections, his untouchable status on campus. So I set up a meeting with him in the library, 3rd floor, back corner, the same spot where everything started 3 months ago. I made sure to arrive early, found a table with good acoustics, and tested my recording app multiple times. The little red dot blinked steadily. Then I waited, watching students filter past with their coffee cups and heavy backpacks, oblivious to what was about to happen. He showed up 20 minutes late on purpose. Classic power move. He sauntered in wearing his usual uniform, khakis, boat shoes, that navy polo with his fraternity letters embroidered on the chest. He sat down across from me with that same smirk that used to make my skin crawl. Now it just made me more determined. I kept my face neutral, channeling every acting class I'd ever taken. Told him I wanted to talk about dropping my complaint. His eyes lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. He leaned back in his chair like he'd already won, man-spreading and taking up more space than necessary. I fed him exactly what he wanted to hear, each word carefully rehearsed. Said I was tired of fighting the system, that my grades were suffering from all the stress, that I just wanted to move on with my life and forget this whole mess. He ate it up like the privileged predator he was. Started talking about how smart I was being, how this was best for everyone involved, how glad he was that I finally understood how things worked in the real world. Then I played dumb, widening my eyes just enough to seem naive. Asked him why the university was so against me, why they seemed to take his side immediately without even investigating properly. That's when his ego took over completely. He started bragging about his uncle, the dean of student affairs, about how many times his uncle had handled situations like this, about how the system was designed to protect guys like him from misunderstandings. He actually used air quotes. I kept asking innocent questions, tilting my head like I was genuinely curious. He kept answering, getting more animated with each response. Told me about Sarah, the scholarship student from last year who'd tried to report him, about Rachel's sister who'd been too traumatized to even finish filing paperwork, even mentioned names I didn't recognize, Jessica, Maria, Ashley, girls who'd left school suddenly mid-semester, girls who'd been too scared to even file reports. He was practically glowing with pride, like he was recounting sports victories instead of destroying lives. Rachel was positioned at another table 15 feet away, recording from a different angle with her laptop camera aimed our way. She'd told Jake's friends she was studying for organic chemistry there. They didn't suspect anything. Why would they? She'd been hanging with them for weeks now, laughing at their stupid jokes, pretending to be impressed by their trust funds, playing the role perfectly while documenting every disgusting thing they said. Jake leaned in close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and suffocating. His breath smelled like energy drinks and arrogance. He told me I should be grateful for this opportunity, that other girls hadn't been given this chance to walk away clean, that his uncle usually made things much harder for troublemakers who didn't know their place, that I was lucky he liked me enough to offer this deal. Then he made his biggest mistake. He pulled out his phone, the latest iPhone in a designer case, to show me something. Said he wanted me to understand what I was up against if I continued with my complaint. He opened that shared drive Rachel had told us about, the one they called their trophy room, scrolled through folders full of girls' names, each one a person whose life they'd documented and violated, clicked on one labeled Melissa_2019 to show me what they had on some poor girl from last year, photos taken without consent, screenshots of private messages, even her class schedule and home address. I felt sick but kept my face calm, gripping my hands together under the table so he wouldn't see them shaking. Asked him how many girls were in there. He laughed, actually laughed, and said he'd lost count after 50. Said his uncle helped them keep everything organized in case any of the girls tried to cause problems later, that they had stuff going back years, a whole archive of leverage, that no one could touch them because they owned this place, because his family had donated millions to the university. Rachel texted me a thumbs up emoji. She'd managed to screenshot everything while he was distracted bragging to me, had even gotten a clear shot of his phone screen. We had him, but I needed one more thing, the final piece. I asked him directly about that day in the study room, said I wanted to understand what I'd done wrong so I could avoid such misunderstandings in the future. His whole demeanor changed instantly. The fake charm disappeared. He got this dark look in his eyes, the real Jake showing through, told me I'd done nothing wrong, that he knew exactly what he was doing, that he just wanted to see if I was really as pure and untouchable as I pretended to be, that girls like me needed to be taught lessons about the real world, that I should be thanking him for only showing me pictures instead of taking his own. I thanked him for explaining everything so clearly, said I understood now how things really worked, got up to leave, moving slowly and deliberately. He grabbed my wrist as I passed, not hard enough to leave marks but firm enough to make his point clear. His fingers felt like shackles, told me to remember our conversation, that if I changed my mind about dropping the complaint, things would get much worse for me, that his uncle had connections at every university in the state. I nodded and pulled away, resisting the urge to run, walked out slowly, counting each step, didn't run even though every instinct screamed at me to get away from him. Rachel followed a few minutes later, making a show of packing up her chemistry textbook. We met in the bathroom down the hall and hugged so tight I could barely breathe. Both of us were shaking, but we'd done it. We had everything we needed. That night, our group chat was buzzing with activity. Everyone had heard what happened through our network. Sarah started crying when she heard Jake mention her name on the recording, remembering her own encounter with him. Rachel's sister threw up when we told her about the folders, about seeing her name on that digital trophy list. But we all agreed it was time to move forward, to stop being victims and become fighters. My dad flew in the next day on the red-eye from Seattle. He listened to all the recordings in my dorm room, his face growing darker with each word, read through all the evidence on my laptop, taking detailed notes in his legal pad, met with each girl individually in the conference room he'd booked at a nearby hotel to hear their stories firsthand. He was building something bigger than just my case. He was building a pattern of behavior that couldn't be ignored or explained away. Jake must have sensed something was off because his behavior changed. He started getting paranoid, looking over his shoulder on campus, accused Rachel of being a spy in front of his whole friend group. She played it off perfectly, should have won an Oscar, said I was spreading rumors about her because I was jealous, that she'd never betray them for some uptight girl who couldn't take a joke, even cried fake tears that streaked her mascara. They bought it completely because they couldn't imagine a girl being that good at lying to them. His uncle called me in again the following week. This time he wasn't subtle about his threats. The pretense of caring about my well-being was gone. He told me directly that pursuing this would ruin my future, that no graduate school would accept someone with my reputation once he was done with me, that he had connections at every major university, every prominent research lab, that I'd never work in my field if I didn't drop this immediately. I just smiled and thanked him for his concern, watching his face turn red with frustration. The threats escalated after that meeting. Dead animals left outside my dorm, a rat, then a bird, each with a note saying, "You're next." My car tires slashed twice in 1 week, security cameras conveniently malfunctioning both times, fake social media accounts spreading lies about me, saying I was sleeping with professors for grades, photos of me taken without my knowledge posted online with horrible captions about what I supposedly did at parties I'd never attended. They were trying to break me down systematically. But something had changed in all of us. I wasn't alone anymore, wasn't isolated and afraid. The other girls formed a protection squad without even discussing it. We walked each other to class in groups, never letting anyone go alone, studied together in public spaces with multiple exits, ate together in the dining hall, strength in numbers. Sarah taught us self-defense moves in her apartment, showing us how to break a grip, how to use our keys as weapons. Rachel's sister shared coping strategies from her therapy sessions. We became stronger together than any of us had been alone. My dad's legal team filed the official complaints on a Friday afternoon, both criminal charges and a federal Title IX complaint that was hundreds of pages thick, named Jake, 4 of his friends, and his uncle specifically, with detailed evidence for each charge. Included over 200 pages of evidence meticulously organized, recordings, screenshots, documents, witness statements from 12 different women, years of cover-ups laid bare in black and white. The courthouse clerk's eyes widened as she stamped each document. The university tried to keep it quiet at first, their PR machine spinning into overdrive, sent us all letters about confidentiality printed on official letterhead, about not discussing ongoing investigations with anyone, including the media, about protecting the reputation of the institution, and considering our futures. My dad laughed when he read mine, a harsh sound with no humor in it, said they were scared of the publicity, said they should be terrified. Jake was arrested the following Monday morning outside his fraternity house. I wasn't there, but Rachel saw it happen from across the quad, said he tried to run when he saw the police cars, said he was screaming about his rights, about his father's lawyers, about how we were ruining his life over nothing. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. He was finally experiencing a fraction of the fear he'd instilled in others. His friends were picked up throughout the week at various locations around campus. His uncle was the last to go, maintaining his arrogance until the end. They arrested him at his office during a meeting with donors, found boxes of files he was trying to destroy, papers still warm from the shredder, evidence of years of cover-ups, each file a story of injustice, names of victims we didn't even know about, going back 15 years. The investigation expanded beyond just our cases into something massive. More girls started coming forward from years past, emboldened by our action. Rachel finally dropped her cover in spectacular fashion, gathered Jake's remaining friends, and told them exactly what she thought of them. Said she'd recorded every disgusting thing they'd said over the past 2 months, that she had screenshots of all their group chats, their locker room talk, that their trophy folder was in FBI hands now, every sick photo and video cataloged as evidence. Some of them actually cried when they realized how thoroughly they'd been played. The university went into damage control mode immediately. Suddenly they cared about victim support and student safety. Suddenly they wanted to hear our stories and make changes. Suddenly they were sorry for how we'd been treated, how our reports had been mishandled. It was all fake concern, but at least things were changing. New administrators were brought in, people with actual experience in handling assault cases. Sarah got a call that changed everything for her. They were reinstating her scholarship that had been mysteriously revoked after she'd reported Jake, with back pay for the semester she'd missed, with a formal apology from the university president himself. She cried for hours on my dorm room floor. Her family had sacrificed so much, taken out loans they couldn't afford. Now she could finally finish her degree without that crushing burden. Rachel's sister decided to come back to school after dropping out 2 years prior. The university offered her a full ride to compensate for their failures, counseling support with therapists who specialized in trauma, whatever she needed to feel safe on campus. It had taken 2 years, but she was finally getting justice. She moved into our dorm building just down the hall, became part of our group officially, not just the girl we were fighting for. The trial prep was intense and exhausting. Jake's family family hired expensive lawyers from a firm that specialized in defending privileged predators. Tried to paint us as conspirators who'd planned this for attention, as jealous girls making things up because we'd been rejected. But the evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. The recordings were crystal clear. The pattern was established across years. Even their lawyers looked uncomfortable defending them during some of the depositions. My dad worked 18-hour days preparing our case, fueled by coffee and righteous anger. He brought in expert witnesses from across the country, trauma specialists who could explain our reactions, digital forensics experts who verified the authenticity of every piece of evidence, former university administrators who confirmed the systematic cover-ups they'd witnessed. He was building something that couldn't be torn down by expensive lawyers and family connections. Jake tried to contact me once through his lawyer, a last desperate attempt. Wanted to apologize for the misunderstanding. Wanted to make a deal that would make this all go away. Said he'd admit to everything if I dropped the charges and convinced the others to do the same. My dad laughed so hard he cried actual tears. Told them we had everything we needed for conviction. That deals were for people who had something to offer besides empty apologies. The other girls were incredible throughout everything. A support system I'd never imagined having. We had group therapy sessions in Sarah's apartment every Tuesday. Movie nights where we didn't talk about any of it, just ate popcorn and watched comedies. Dance parties in Sarah's living room where we screamed along to angry music. We were healing together slowly, building something new and strong from all that pain and fear. More evidence kept surfacing as the investigation deepened. Jake's uncle had been at this for over a decade, maybe longer. The trophy folder went back to when he first started working there, fresh out of graduate school. Some of those girls had graduated years ago, moved on with their lives, thought they'd left it all behind in the past. Now they were being contacted about testifying, their trauma resurfacing. The university president resigned suddenly on a Thursday morning, said it was for personal reasons, family health issues. We all knew better. The board was forcing him out. The board was cleaning house systematically. Anyone connected to the cover-ups was being pushed out quietly. It was satisfying to watch, but also infuriating that it took federal involvement for them to act. Rachel discovered something horrible in the final batch of evidence from Jake's phone. He'd been planning to substance someone at an upcoming party. They had messages discussing which girls would be easiest targets, who didn't have many friends to notice, who wouldn't be believed if they reported anything. My name was on the list with a star next to it. That revelation broke something in me that I'd been holding together with sheer will. I'd been holding it together for months, being the strong one, being strong for everyone who needed me. But seeing my name on that list with detailed plans made it real in a different way. I spent 3 days in bed, unable to move. The girls took turns bringing me food I couldn't eat, sitting with me in silence, reminding me we'd won, that he couldn't hurt anyone now. My dad used that list in court as evidence of premeditation. It showed clear planning and intent to commit assault, intent to harm specific targets. Jake's lawyers tried to argue it was just talk between college boys, just jokes between friends that were taken out of context. But combined with everything else, it painted a clear picture for the jury. These weren't mistakes or misunderstandings. This was predatory behavior from someone who'd been enabled his whole life. The university settled the civil suits quickly and quietly. They couldn't afford the publicity of a drawn-out trial with daily news coverage. Each victim received substantial compensation, scholarship reinstatement for those who'd lost funding, formal apologies that actually acknowledged wrongdoing, policy changes named after us that would protect future students. It wasn't enough for what we'd endured, but it was something tangible. Jake's uncle pled guilty to avoid the spectacle of a trial. Couldn't face having all his crimes laid out publicly for his colleagues to see. He got 5 to 7 years in federal prison, lost his pension he'd built over decades, his reputation in academic circles destroyed forever. Everything he'd built by destroying others crumbled. He looked small in his orange jumpsuit at sentencing, pathetic and ordinary without his power. The criminal trial for Jake and his friends took months of preparation and testimony. We all testified over several days, faced brutal cross-examination from defense attorneys, relived our worst moments in front of strangers who were judging our credibility, but we did it together as a united front, supported each other through the hardest questions, held hands during the worst parts when they showed evidence, refused to be broken by the process designed to break us. Jake took the stand in his own defense against his lawyer's advice. It was a catastrophic mistake. He couldn't help himself, the narcissism too strong, started lying about things we had recordings of him saying, got angry when confronted with his own words, showed everyone in that courtroom exactly who he really was beneath the polished exterior. His lawyers looked defeated as he destroyed his own case. The jury deliberated for less than a day before returning. Guilty on all counts: assault, conspiracy, harassment. Jake got 8 to 12 years in state prison. His friends got various sentences based on their level of involvement. When they read the verdict, Jake's mom screamed from the gallery, called us liars and whores, had to be physically removed from court by bailiffs. I felt nothing but hollow victory. After it was over, we all went to Sarah's apartment in silence, ordered pizza that sat mostly uneaten, cried until we had no tears left, laughed at things that weren't funny, felt empty and full at the same time, drained but complete. Justice had been served, but it didn't erase what happened to us. Didn't give us back the time we lost to fear, the innocence stolen by predators. But it was something real and final. The university implemented new policies within months, independent reporting systems run by trained professionals, mandatory training that actually addressed consent and bystander intervention, support services run by people who understood trauma and believed survivors. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than before. Future students would be safer because we fought and won. I started speaking at other schools the following semester, sharing our story to packed auditoriums, warning about the signs everyone missed, teaching girls to trust their instincts when something felt wrong, to support each other instead of competing, to document everything because memory could be questioned, to never give up even when the system failed them. My dad came to every speech when he could, said he was proud of me afterward, that I was stronger than he ever imagined possible. Sarah graduated with honors that spring, gave a speech at commencement about resilience and finding strength in community, about finding your voice when others tried to silence it, about the power of believing survivors and standing together. She got a standing ovation that lasted 5 minutes. Jake's empty seat in the audience said everything that needed to be said about consequences. Rachel's sister finished her degree too after returning, walked across that stage with her head held high and shoulders back. Her family cried in the audience. Rachel cried beside me. We all cried together. It had been a long journey back, but she made it. Proved that they couldn't destroy her spirit, that she was more than what happened to her in that dark room. Our group stayed close after graduation, bonds unbreakable. unbreakable. We had connections forged in fire and struggle, understanding born from shared trauma and triumph, love that came from seeing each other at our absolute worst and choosing to stay anyway. We were more than survivors now. We were sisters in every way that mattered, warriors who'd fought together, champions for each other, and those who came after. The ripple effects continued for years afterward. Other universities started investigating similar patterns of cover-ups. More administrators were exposed and removed. More victims found justice and closure. We'd started something bigger than just our individual cases. We'd changed how these things were handled systemically, made it harder for predators to hide behind institutional protection. I still have nightmares sometimes that wake me in cold sweats, still flinch at certain smells that bring me back, still feel my heart race in empty study rooms with no windows. But I also feel proud of what we accomplished, strong in ways I never imagined, connected to something bigger than myself or my trauma. We'd faced monsters and won decisively, protected future students from similar harm, refused to be silenced by power and threats. Jake will be out eventually on parole. His uncle too if he serves minimum time. They'll have to register as offenders for life, live with restrictions on where they can work and live, face consequences for the rest of their lives wherever they go. It's not enough for what they took from us and others, but it's something tangible. And sometimes something has to be enough to move forward. The university put up a plaque in the library last year, right where Jake cornered me that first time. It talks about consent and respect, about resources for those who need help, about the importance of believing survivors and taking action. I like to think of him seeing it when he gets out someday, knowing that spot where he felt powerful and untouchable now stands for everything he tried to destroy, that his hunting ground became a monument to his downfall. We won in every way that mattered. It cost us everything, but we won completely. And now when I tell this story to new audiences, I don't shake anymore from remembered fear. Don't cry from the pain of memory. Just feel proud of what we accomplished together, of who we became through struggle, of the girls we protected by refusing to stay silent when silence was expected, by playing the long game with patience, by winning against those who thought they were untouchable. I spent the next few weeks trying to get back to normal, started going to classes again, eating regular meals, sleeping through the night without waking up in panic. The other girls and I still met up twice a week at Sarah's place. We'd order Chinese food and watch trashy reality TV. Nobody talked about the trial or what came next. We just existed together in comfortable silence. Then one Tuesday my phone buzzed during chemistry lab. It was my dad. Jake's family was appealing the verdict. They'd hired some hotshot lawyer from New York. Guy specialized in getting rich kids out of trouble. My hands started shaking so bad I dropped my test tube. The TA asked if I was okay. I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. The lawyer started a media campaign immediately. Went on every podcast that would have him. Said we were a coordinated group of liars. That we'd planned this whole thing for money. That the university settlement proved we were just after cash. He had this smooth way of talking that made lies sound reasonable. Made Jake sound like the real victim. Rachel found the interviews first. Sent them to our group chat at 2 a.m. We all stayed up listening to this man twist our truth into something ugly. He claimed the recordings were edited. That we'd seduced Jake and his friends for evidence. That my dad had coached us all on what to say. Every word felt like being assaulted all over again. Sarah wanted to respond publicly. Do our own interviews. Set the record straight. But my dad said no. Said it would only give them more ammunition. That we'd won in court where it mattered. That public opinion couldn't change the verdict. He was right, but it still hurt watching people online debate whether we were telling the truth. The appeals process meant more meetings with lawyers, more depositions, more questions about every detail of our lives. Jake's new lawyer was worse than the others. He'd ask about our dating histories, our social media posts from high school, whether we'd been drinking at parties freshman year, trying to find anything to make us look bad. I started getting messages from strangers, some supportive, most not. They'd found my Instagram even though it was private, somehow got my phone number, my email. Random numbers would call at 3 a.m., breathing heavy, whispering threats, saying they knew where I lived, that Jake was innocent, that I'd ruined a good man's life. Campus security increased patrols around our dorms, but they couldn't be everywhere. I'd see guys who looked like Jake's friends and panic, run to the nearest building, hide in bathrooms until my heart stopped racing. Later I'd realize they were just random students, but in the moment my body couldn't tell the difference. Rachel's mental health started deteriorating. She'd been so strong during the trial, our secret weapon, but the aftermath was crushing her. She stopped going to classes, stopped showering. Her roommate called me worried, said Rachel hadn't left her bed in 3 days, just stared at the ceiling playing the same song on repeat. We staged an intervention of sorts, all showed up at her dorm with her favorite snacks, didn't leave until she talked to us. She broke down completely, said she felt guilty for betraying Jake's friends, even though they were monsters, even though she'd done the right thing. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was a terrible person. Sarah's family started getting calls too. Her little sister was being bullied at school, kids saying her family was full of liars, that Sarah had made everything up for attention. Her parents wanted her to come home, transfer schools, start fresh somewhere nobody knew her name, but Sarah refused to run. The university tried to distance themselves from the whole situation, stopped returning our calls about the promised policy changes. The new support services were understaffed and underfunded. The independent reporting system was run by one overworked counselor. Everything they'd promised was falling apart already. My grades were suffering from all the stress. I'd been pre-med since freshman year, had a 3.9 GPA before all this started. Now I was barely passing organic chemistry, couldn't focus during lectures, kept having flashbacks during labs. My advisor suggested taking a semester off, but I couldn't let them win like that. Jake's uncle got transferred to a minimum security facility, some country club prison with tennis courts. His lawyer argued he wasn't a physical threat, just a white-collar criminal who destroyed evidence. The judge agreed, said he'd served enough time in regular prison. It made me want to scream at the injustice. Then something shifted. A journalist reached out through my dad, real investigative reporter, not some podcaster looking for clicks. She'd been following our case for months, had done deep research into Jake's family, found patterns going back generations, wanted to tell the real story if we'd cooperate. We met her at a diner off campus. She was older, maybe 50s, had kind eyes and rough hands, showed us her previous work exposing corruption, SX trafficking rings, corporate cover-ups. She wasn't interested in drama, just facts, just truth. We agreed to work with her. She spent weeks interviewing each of us separately, asked hard questions but respectfully, actually listened to our answers, fact-checked everything we said, dug into court records, university finances, found connections we'd missed. The story was bigger than even we'd realized. Jake's family had been donating to the university for decades, not just normal donations. donations, targeted ones, to specific administrators, to specific programs, always right after someone in their family got in trouble. Jake's older brother had similar accusations in high school, all buried with money. The article came out on a Monday morning, front page of a major newspaper, picked up by wire services immediately. It laid out everything in devastating detail: the systematic cover-ups, the financial connections, the generational pattern of abuse, names, dates, dollar amounts, all verified and fact-checked. Jake's family lawyer went silent after that. No more podcasts, no more interviews. The appeal suddenly stalled. Their PR firm dropped them as clients. Other victims started coming forward, not just from our university, from Jake's high school, his brother's fraternity at another college. The pattern was undeniable. The university board called an emergency meeting. This time they couldn't ignore it, couldn't claim ignorance. The article had exposed too much. Alumni were pulling donations. Parents were threatening to pull their kids. The damage to their reputation was catastrophic. They needed to act decisively. They fired 3 more administrators who'd been named in the article, launched a real investigation into decades of cover-ups, hired an outside firm to overhaul their entire reporting system, allocated actual money for victim support services. It was everything they should have done initially. Rachel started getting better after the article came out, said seeing the truth in print made her feel validated, like she hadn't imagined how bad it was. She started going to therapy twice a week, taking her medication regularly, slowly returning to herself, still fragile but fighting. Sarah got into her dream graduate program, full scholarship to study public policy, wanted to work on legislation protecting students, make real systematic change. Her family was so proud. Her little sister wrote her college essay about having a hero for a sister, made us all cry when Sarah shared it. I managed to salvage my grades somewhat, retook organic chemistry over the summer, got my GPA back above 3.5. Not what it was before, but respectable. My med school applications talked about overcoming adversity, about fighting for justice. Some schools rejected me, others saw strength in survival. Jake's appeal was formally denied. His lawyer withdrew from the case. His family stopped visiting him in prison. Even they couldn't pretend anymore. He was truly alone with the consequences of his actions. No money or connections could save him now. He'd have to serve his full sentence. More universities started reaching out, wanting us to speak about our experience, help them reform their systems. We started a consulting firm of sorts, reviewing policies, training administrators, making sure other students wouldn't face what we did, turning our trauma into something productive. The nightmares faded slowly. Therapy helped, time helped, having each other helped most. We'd text at random hours, share memes, complain about normal things, boys who ghosted us, professors who assigned too much reading, regular college problems that felt like gifts after everything. Rachel's sister graduated with her social work degree, got a job at a crisis center, helping other survivors navigate the system. She said our fight had inspired her career choice, that she wanted to be the advocate she'd needed, to make sure nobody felt alone in their worst moments. I ran into one of Jake's former friends at a coffee shop. He looked away immediately, practically ran out the door, left his expensive latte on the counter. It was a small moment but satisfying. They'd all transferred schools after the article, couldn't handle everyone knowing what they'd done. The trophy folder evidence led to more investigations. FBI got involved, found similar groups at other schools, a whole network of entitled predators sharing tactics, sharing victims. The investigation expanded nationally. Our case had exposed something massive and systemic. My dad framed the newspaper article, hung it in his office, said it was the case he was proudest of, not because of the legal victory, but because we'd changed things, protected future students, refused to be silenced by power and money, made real lasting change. Sarah started dating someone new junior year, nice guy from her statistics class. She was terrified at first, kept waiting for him to reveal some horrible secret, but he was just genuinely kind, patient with her triggers, understanding about her past, proof that good men existed. We all went to Rachel's graduation together, cheered embarrassingly loud when she walked. Her parents cried, her sister cried, we all cried again. She'd almost dropped out so many times, but she made it. Graduated with honors in psychology, planned to get her doctorate. The university put up a memorial garden, named it after all of us, had benches with plaques telling our story. It was beautiful but also strange, seeing our trauma memorialized in landscaping, but students would sit there studying, reading the plaques, learning what happened. That mattered. Jake wrote me a letter from prison. My dad intercepted it, asked if I wanted to read it. I said no. Whatever he had to say didn't matter. His words had no power over me anymore. My dad had it destroyed, said it was probably manipulation anyway, an attempt to maintain control. We started a scholarship fund with part of our settlement money for students who'd experienced assault, who needed financial help to stay in school. The university matched our contribution. It grew every year, helped dozens of students continue their education, something positive from all that pain. I got into medical school eventually. Not my first choice, but a good program. Specialized in trauma-informed care. Wanted to be the doctor I'd needed, who understood that healing wasn't linear, that trauma lived in the body, that believing patients was the first step. The 5-year anniversary of the trial passed quietly. We all met up for dinner. Nobody mentioned what day it was, just caught up on life, jobs, relationships, normal things. We'd integrated the experience. It was part of us, but didn't define us anymore. We were more than survivors now. Jake's uncle died in prison. Heart attack apparently. He was only 55. Jake wasn't allowed to attend the funeral. His family didn't want him there anyway. They'd disowned him completely. Changed their last name even. Wanted no connection to what he'd done. The changes at the university became a model for others. Federal guidelines were updated based on our case. Training programs implemented nationally. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Real systematic change that would outlast all of us. Our names attached to something meaningful. I still see Sarah regularly. She works in DC now, drafting legislation, making change at the highest levels. Rachel's a therapist specializing in trauma, helps other survivors find their voice. Her sister runs a nonprofit. We all found ways to transform pain into purpose. Sometimes I walk past that spot in the library, where it all started. The plaque is still there. Students sitting nearby studying, oblivious to the history. And that's okay. They're safe because we weren't, because we fought, because we won. That's enough for me.